You're muted, Jules, in case you're speaking.
Thank you, Harry, and welcome to Autistic Radio. Every Sunday, there's a 444 meeting where people drop in and chat about things from their own lives that make sense and have a relationship to autism. Today, we were lucky to have Michael drop in, and he told us about Calm Spaces. It's a forum, calmspaces.org, aimed at the 40 plus, 50 plus autistic adult. And we know that there's a lot of us out there that don't have that much network space, especially if we're in the maturer years. And a lot of us have not known about our autism for very long. So we'll have a little think about how we can help Calm Spaces, because a lot of our people are in that demographic. And we are a demographic that gets forgotten. We've got a couple of recordings coming up. We've again secured the two professionals who have worked together before, talking about floor time and ABA and alternatives to ABA, and changing the world away from the bad old days. So we're going to encourage those conversations, alternatives to ABA, and we've got another recording coming up with those two professionals. So yeah. Another thing that's come up recently is an invitation for us to comment on co-production. We've been asked to have a Teams meeting with the Irish Association of UK behaviourists, because they're looking to form some kind of large-scale co-production with the autistic community. And I have to say, we start from a very skeptical angle on this, but we are an open organisation. So what we do is we say yes, and we find out what it's all about, and we don't just slam the door in people's faces. So I've made an appointment, or offered some times for an appointment to have that conversation, and we'll keep you updated as to whether that goes any further. It's a very tentative, possibly piece of advice that they're asking for at the moment. We're all organised for the conference next week, and this is the last opportunity to email me in if you want to be one of the people who has a short, pithy question for the behaviourist community to put to their UK society conference, something that you think really represents what autistic people would want to ask if they were standing there, being able to protest or say something that enlightens them. So that it's coming up to quite close to the wire before, because I've chosen a few from the comments already. So but you do have the last opportunity. So email news@autisticradio.com if you want to comment and have something put out for that. That's me, Harry. We're going to be a bit busier as we go through, but that'll do for now.
Thanks very much, Jules. Thanks for that update. Good evening, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 16th of March, 2025. And this is where I go through the Facebook posts and read through them and have a discussion on each topic that we go on. So I'll go right into it with the first post, which is from Emergence Divergence, Divergence Ramblings of David Gray Hammond, who's an author of books, writer of blogs, advocate, mentor, trainer, and professional nuisance. And what he's done a column on, an article. I'll say that again. What David has done an article on is regarding autistic people and the medical perceptions of pain and how that is misunderstood. So he says that autistic people are dying early. Medical perceptions of pain are contributing, and he recently posted about autistic people and this. So I'll go through his article. He says that there are a lot of aspects of autistic life in which we don't highlight the disparity in the cultural competency amongst our professionals. Unfortunately, healthcare is not a battle we can choose to walk away from. Our lives literally depend on being taken seriously and treated respectfully. There are some troubling statistics around autistic life expectancy and mortality. In my opinion, there is a correlation, if not a causative relationship, between medical mistreatment of autistics and these harrowing statistics. Of the statistics, I have seen life expectancies around the age of 36 to 39 years of age for autistic people. And he's got links that relates to that statistics. I've also seen suggestions that we are 51% more likely to die in a given year than the general population. I don't think I need to push the point much further. It is clear that we are not democratically that necessary as the best outcomes in life. Our experience of pain is ultimately linked with our sensory experience. In particular, interoceptive differences mean that we can have a completely different response to pain than our non-autistic peers. Monotropic brains mean we might not be able to stop thinking about the little pains, but may not even notice something significant or life-changing. The way we embody pain is different as well. Autistic people are known for having different physical expressions. And when you throw in the significant relationship between the autistic community and the chronic pain community, we can see why an autistic person may not appear to be as much pain as they claim to be. This doesn't absolve medical professionals or a lack of understanding. When a person works in healthcare, they should be taking people seriously, regardless of whether an ailment presents in the way that is expected or not. I posit that dismissive attitudes amongst medical professionals and medical gaslighting lead to further health complications from injury and illness. To consider it any other way, if doctors took us seriously, we would probably live longer and happier lives. For those working in healthcare, I applaud the care you give to many, but there is so much not being done for autistic people, and that cannot be ignored. Autistic people are dying every day from ailments that needn't have been terminal. Next time someone tells you their experience, believe them. I know it's a bit heavy, this particular topic, for the first one of the night, but what's people's thoughts on this particular one?
Oh, I was ignored when I was in pain by a dentist, and he just carried on as though nothing. And it's left me with a lifelong fear of dentists.
I was just thinking about how really difficult it is, or for me, and I'm sure I've heard for others too, to describe your pain or rate your pain on a scale. It's just really difficult. I've seen some visuals that seem a little bit more helpful, but I think it's part of the reason that I find myself avoiding doctors, and trying to just take care of myself as best I can, which I know is not always the best thing to do.
I have my own experience, with doctors and healthcare professionals. And in fairness, I've actually been, had a reasonable experience in comparison to others. But one that does stand out with me is when I went up to the local hospital because I thought I did something to my shoulder. Well, I did, but I thought it was something serious. It's because I was playing as a goalkeeper, and the way I was throwing myself on the ground, I kind of hurt myself. So I went to the local hospital just to get a check to see if it wasn't serious, because it wasn't actually an emergency or anything like that. It was just to check to see whether I'm overthinking about it's just maybe a muscular thing that will just pass in time, and I'm overthinking because it's so painful. And when I was trying to explain this to the nurse that took me in, she was very abrupt and very, very impatient, like, get on with it, what you try to tell me. But as soon as I told her I was autistic, she changed. Then she sort of realised I've made a mistake here, and she couldn't be any more nicer after that. But what that reminds me is that can happen to a lot of other people that may not kind of stand up for themselves. Because I did say, wait a minute, please, please don't talk to me like that. I'm autistic. I find it difficult to explain my situation because I'm a bit of distress here. And she was fine after that. But what I'm saying is, it could knock a lot of people's confidence by going to any medical professionals because of that attitude. Maybe she was stressed, maybe she was this, maybe it was that, but that doesn't matter. It's just that can affect so many people and so many bad experiences. And it can only take one bad experience from one person that would stop you kind of going to even like your GP or anything like that ever again, even though that's just one person and one experience. It doesn't matter. One bad experience is enough to haunt you. Because even that little silly things I think of myself haunt me, never mind something that's quite severe and traumatic even. And there's always been that time where I went to a doctor about an ailment which I wasn't sure about, and I was hoping for the doctor to give me an answer, but they're asking me questions like how much pain is it? It's just all these kind of questions, and you're finding it difficult to articulate a proper answer, to get the right treatment or the right way forward. And because when you go to a general practitioner, your appointment's limited as well. So you're thinking, there's this countdown in your brain. It's like, I've not got time to go through a full story to give the doctor an actual, full concern that I have because of the time limit. So all these things come into play, and that's not even touching on people who have different pain thresholds and all that, and how that can be misunderstood, even though someone's in desperate need of medical care.
Harry, I could do with writing down what you said to that health professional when you advocated for yourself. It just sounded like such a helpful script.
I was thinking exactly the same thing, Nicola. Put it on a card and keep in your wallet.
Yeah.
I found that telling someone you're autistic is not always a good thing, because sometimes you tell them they're autistic, they go back to their predefined view of what they think autistic is and stop listening.
So it depends on the individual. I think I was maybe lucky that day. I think basically what it was is you could tell that medical professional wasn't stressed out and all that, and that can affect your judgment all. But you get people are just, they know best. So if you tell them, they go, no, I'm a doctor, I've got the authority, I'm a medical professional of some kind, I know what I'm talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, and you could be easily ignored. So I can totally understand that can come into play. And it actually upsets me that happens to people.
I'm thinking that a sentence like that, even without the word autistic in it, is a good piece of self-advocacy. It's a good, calm way of saying I'm having difficulty with communicating. Please, that sudden appeal to somebody's nature to see it as a different way around. Instead of somebody being awkward, somebody having difficulty. I think that could work even without autism in there.
The next post is from Awesome Training, who are an education page, autistic-led neuro-affirming training, mentoring, consultancy and support for people ready to make the world a better place for autistics. And basically they're sharing a quote, or they're kind of denouncing a quote that's generally said about people with autism or people that are autistic. And they say that autistic have difficulty in interacting socially. But what they're saying is autistics don't have difficulty with interacting socially, but we are being judged socially, leading to othering, exclusion, bullying, and discrimination. Remove judgment, love. What's other people's thoughts on this?
Well, it's a kind of chicken and egg circle, isn't it? If you're being judged socially, and that is the root of where we start. If you're being judged as inappropriate, excluded for the way you communicate, then you end up having difficulty interacting socially. So it's a bit circular. I like the idea of changing the narrative and saying it's not us at fault. I like the idea that it's not us that are interacting because we have a difficulty that makes it imperfect. But the onus is on the society around us to have less of a narrow view of how human beings should be overall, for all their differences. We live in a world that some people want to push against those hard-won concepts and ideas that have developed over my life. Those ideas of equality and people having difference that's to be respected and not judged socially. They're not going to go away as concepts, even if people try to suppress them in the politics of the world at the moment.
Yeah, Karen sharing. Always feel like non-autistic people infantilize us when we disclose our neural differences, regardless of whether we have a great deal more knowledge and skills than they do. The second they know, things change, and they assume we are the ones who are struggling to communicate. Absolutely. It's that disclosure as well of saying that you're autistic and how people step back from disclosing that because they might feel they have felt when they've done it before, past experiences, that they've been treated differently, like inferior, or maybe not done in a bad way, but it's like people kind of trying to be kind of, I don't know, just try kind of, it's like, it's the approach is totally different. It's like all of a sudden it's like feeling sorry for you and trying to kind of make sure you're okay, and sometimes even giving advice you don't even want or even ask for. So, yeah, I can get that. That's how I look at it.
The judgment is about how we're judged against how neurotypical people do things. I have no problem socialising, but I socialise as a autistic person socialises.
That's very true. I mean, there's this sort of, I know every time I kind of about to say this, I kind of laugh, even though I almost cry as well. It's like there's a so-called normal ways to do things, like communicating, or even the way you dress, the way you walk, the way you speak in terms of your pitch of your voice, the language that you use, not in terms of swearing, but in terms of speaking the right way or doing or communicating the right way. And as we know, a lot of autistic people don't communicate through talking either. They do other communication methods, and there's a kind of prejudice around that and assumption around that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like it's trying to show there's different ways of doing things, and just because it's different doesn't mean it's inferior. It needs to be cured.
I'm liking reading KT in the text. I always feel like non-autistic people infantilize us when we disclose our neurodifferences, regardless of whether we have had a great deal more knowledge and skills than they do. The second that they know, things change, and they assume that we are the ones who are struggling to communicate. Even if they thought we were weird before in any way, many suddenly believe it's okay to presume us as incompetent when they find out that we are autistic. And I'm so glad to see somebody else writing that. I remember right back to one of our earliest podcasts, right back in the, oh crikey, it must be a few years now, and we kept covering disclosure, the idea of disclosure, because we were talking to a researcher and a autism professional at the time who was realizing their own autism. And I remember saying very much how disclosure often hands somebody else a piece of information that means something completely different to them, to what you're disclosing, and that they can use it in any way they like. And so that when I disclose, I only really disclose when I feel that it's not going to change people's attitudes, or that it won't change them in any way that I don't have a comfortability with. In all kinds of stressful situations, I suppose I wouldn't say I was autistic. I would mask my way through as a survival, because that would probably be my experience, masking up and getting through it, rather than saying that I was autistic and hoping that that would make sense to somebody, is probably my survival.
My whole experience of the adult social care was being emphasised. I'd same with family. They just spoke over me.
Yeah, there's been a lot of experiences of that. I've had it myself in many ways. It's like saying something and then you're not ridiculed, or they certainly didn't say it to ridicule you, but you felt you've been ridiculed or insulted because you've said something. I can't even give an example, but there has been times where it's, oh, Harry, what are you talking about? Or you calm down, you sort of thing. It's like, what? I don't mean to laugh. It's just comical thinking back on it, but it's it can be quite damaging to a lot of people, even with good intentions.
Roman's using text. He says, I have difficulty interacting socially, but it isn't autism. I just have problems with the machine. I don't quite get the nuances of what Ray is putting in his poetry there. KT's come up with, we often see so many things way before others do, we being the autistic community, and we are told our progressive, outside of the box ideas are not okay. We are minimized or we're gaslit, only to later see them use our ideas with no credit to us, of course. This is a theme that autistic people talk about a lot, the feeling that we put forward the ideas, they belittle, push them, and then they end up using them and attributing them to themselves. Nicola says, Cassandra syndrome, KT. The Greek story of Cassandra, blessed with foresight but cursed so that no one will believe her. KT suspects that Ray is saying that he is not broken, but the machine, the system is a machine, the system is. And Ray agrees and says, thanks, KT.
The next post is from Kaelin's Autistic Angle, a public figure, autism advocate, therapist, and professional speaker. What Kaelin shared is called Unpleasant Autism Reality, Loneliness. Still in pyjamas at 6 p.m. What Kaelin says, this shouldn't be news to anyone. Statistically speaking, many autistic people don't grow up to live happy lives. They face higher rates of unemployment, isolation, abuse, health issues. You get the idea. My personal brand of tragedy comes with a feeling that I can only describe as whiplash, because at the age of mostly 28, I've achieved things many people only dream of. I'm a published author, international speaker, and I was even on Netflix. Sure, in the way that matters to human minds, I'm ahead. But in the way that matters human hearts, I feel that I've been left behind. It's nothing short of disorientating to feel so needed during business hours, but so unnecessary on nights, weekends, and holidays. In my advocacy work, I describe my communication abilities as the exception, not the rule, because I refuse to allow my success to contribute to the erasing of those with more profound needs. But when it comes to the kind of pervasive longing for connection, but when it comes to the kind of pervasive longing for connection, the sort that quietly echoes in everything you do, I'm not the exception at all. I don't want pity. I want unity. Authentic advocacy means we can celebrate our success and still being willing to confront the tough realities associated with autism. The journey isn't always clear, but every step forward, no matter how small, matters. What's people's thoughts on this?
It's a disconnect and loneliness of isolation, not being wanted or needed after the work of 9 to 5 advocacy finishes for the person. And another thing that we, let's not have toxic positivity about how it is to be autistic. Let's face up to some of the challenges, and statistically, there's lots of things that hit the autistic community, because the autistic community also usually has co-factors that risk it as well, like poverty or lack of work and all kinds of things that disadvantage yourself because you're autistic in our society, rather than anything intrinsic to your brain or your autism. But the other thing that strikes me about it is that being honest and saying that is part of the solution. Being honest and realizing to yourself that you need something, and being honest that we do need to embrace the different difficulties that we have, and saying it out. That is a healing thing in itself. That is a good thing that we all need to embrace, I see. You can improve things if you admit them.
Yeah, some comments have been made that, Katie, I hear that, Raymond, and alienation is default in our Western societies. Robbie says it's the way how I feel. I am not welcome in most places. Autism, automatic exclusion, using safeguarding. Yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. The thing, when I was reading that out, you kind of go, and this is quite heavy here, and it was like reality, and it's like, it's not, it's quite deep and quite traumatic because of the examples it was giving, without giving an example, just the words it was using. But it was like a real life sort of journey experience thing, where it's real, but it's not like it tails off and then it says it's all doom and gloom. It says, I've succeeded here and I've succeeded there, but there's still barriers to overcome, which I think is very inspirational for a lot of people. Not everyone, but to many people. And that kind of struck a chord with me, just reading that out.
I think unity is a really important and strong word there. It makes you think, that word. I wouldn't say I fully understand what she means by it, but it's certainly making me think about unity.
Going on from that, KT says, that is why finding community is so important, and knowing that even if someone local doesn't get you in some situations, we can connect with other people from around the world who do get us. It's the flexibility of the type of community, the type of connections we make with people. This is my connection. I connect with you guys by speaking through this studio system. And then other people connect with us by listening out there as well. Any type of connection, any type of network is going to improve our lives as autistic people. Robbie says, people see me when I'm at open mics. Robbie's a musician, and think it's like that all the time. So seeing him in the community, part of things, whereas actually most of the time he's away from that scene and he's not getting it.
I can identify what Rob was just putting as well. It's not just being in a room full of people without connection and inclusion. It's more being lonely, being on my own. Yeah, I actually read that wrong because that's why I kind of jumped in there. I do agree with that. But sometimes you can be in a room full of people where you just feel detached. I did that in many things growing up. Like I used to go to the Scouts, the Club Scouts before that. And it's just like, even though I kind of took part in things, I never felt I was part of the crowd because I was different. And when you act even just a wee bit different amongst children and teenagers, you're looked upon as a weirdo. And it depends how you react to that, to how intense it can get. But it can be like that in adulthood as well. I can remember actually going to pubs to go out and get some company. Not just to go and speak to people, but just be within company and make me feel better. But sometimes it depends on the mood. Sometimes you're just that mood within you, you just feel so detached and not part of the atmosphere. Quite intense. Well, that's another
Robbie's
good point.
commenting.
Yeah, go and go.
Robbie's commenting that most of the things that get organised for us for drop-ins are based around art and things that he's just not into. And there is always a problem with drop-ins where nothing's expected from you. You know, drop-in just to sometimes not having an activity might actually be the best activity for a drop-in if you're dealing with autistic people. It's sometimes I don't know if other people feel the same.
I'm just thinking about like the conversation we're having and connecting it like to that post when the writer was talking about that loneliness away from work, and it just strikes me as like a lack of having a real lack of like friendship or familial closeness perhaps. And I think that friendship for me, it's like hugely built on humor. And I like what you were saying there about drop-ins just being about like a place to just drop in, because in that sort of open space, you can get to pick up on somebody's humor and make connections because of that. And I think I've had to learn to be really careful not to put too many expectations on one person, and have more openness, not just get kind of too comfy, so you don't like lean on a friendship too much, or the other way around. But I think like the getting to just play, which can just be so hard after like a lot of traumatic knocks about socially that we autistic people tend to have. But I think my experience of connecting with people and building friendships through shared resonances, it's horrible. The first few weeks are horrible. I hate the first 3 weeks so much, and then probably by week 5 I'm like, oh, this is okay, and then I start to enjoy myself. So I kind of just think there's something about building, socializing, or joining, and just not putting a lot of pressure on performing, but just being consistent. That's my experience anyway.
I suppose it's very much getting back on the horse again after a lifetime of feeling that at various times people got it wrong, or it went wrong. we tend to get, as human beings, all human beings, we tend to get an accumulation of little bad experiences that weigh on us a bit more than the extra knowledge and the extra skills that we build up. So we overestimate how things are likely to be the same if we try the same thing again. Getting out there in any kind of way or doing it in a different way, getting back on the horse again, usually that's an autistic trait of persistence, isn't it?
Yeah, Raymond, I like myself, my own company. Maybe I'm lucky. Sometimes I feel like that as well. And sometimes I feel lucky that I like my own company. But then I'm talking about somebody who's just had a few days having a lot of social, social communication, a lot of social, a positive social kind of connection, friends with an auntie and doing things. So, but sometimes it can guide me down if I'm lonely too long. And the only things that I do is basically feels it's just like a work related thing rather than something social. Because without that, you do feel it if you're going without.
I'm going to make sure we catch up with the text here. Robbie says, I can struggle with conversation, but playing music, I have no problem socializing. Katie says, autistic spaces are very different from mixed spaces, as there tends to be much more understanding about our ways of being, the importance of being in autistic-only spaces. Raymond says, but can we be over-dependent on others? And Nicola says she has. Nicola says, as to getting back on the horse with a custom-made, sensory-friendly saddle, so with some of self-knowledge, some of the things to take with you to do it differently because you have enough self-knowledge to do it differently this time, I think is the metaphor there. Robbie feels that as an autistic person that he's almost automatically blamed if things go wrong in a friendship or relationship. And then back to what Raymond said, I like myself and my own company, and I'm lucky. Robbie says, yes, you are. I hate being on my own. And Ray says, I hear that, Robbie. We're not all the same. Robbie says, people assume all autistic people like being on their own. All the autistic place here are for those with intellectual, all the autistic spaces that are provided are for those with intellectual disabilities. And as to that last one, Robbie, I think that is very much a thing. There's a wider group of people who have a wide range of different intellects. And sometimes there isn't anything for people who don't have what they would be classed as an intellectual disability. People of, averageness. Maybe that's part of what we're doing here.
Maybe autistic friendly spaces are important, but it can be risky. What do you mean risky, Raymond?
I was thinking in a general kind of space that isn't prioritised for any group. There may be some that are more creative or more wilder, and in that sense friendly to the needs of someone who's neurodivergent or autistic. But then as I was reflecting on it, I thought, well, when I've, been in these places, they can be a wee bit risky because they can trigger you, because there are elements of it that you may struggle with. Do you see what I mean? Because of the normativity.
Yeah, I get that now, yeah. Like meeting in a busy place. Like I did in...
Or a pub, you know, I
Yeah.
struggle in pubs.
Well, I can relate to that because a couple of friends of mine, sometimes just one, but at least two of us are autistic. And so we meet in Glasgow, which is a busy place on its own. And we meet in a coffee shop one time, 1 month, then next month we go to a pub. And we meet on a Friday afternoon, about 3 o'clock. So it's always quite busy. And it's always quite intense. But over time, we've managed to adapt to it. I think if anybody new came along, they go, wait a minute, what are we doing here? I mean, this is a bit too much. But it's like, because we've been doing it for quite a number of years now, it's like, oh, we know what it's going to be like, so you kind of adapt to it. You even kind of have a kind of joke about it, you know, this place is a bit rowdy today or whatever. Because it's never anywhere it's like bad, it's just loud because it's busy. And it's a nice loud, it's like jovial and all that. But then, okay, sometimes some people can be a bit over loud and they can really hit the sensitivities. But yep, it's meeting places can be limited because if it's too public, it can be too loud. And sometimes it feels it doesn't seem that safe because if you go in somewhere which is public, it seems like anybody can walk through the door. Not specifically give you a hard time, but it just feels that lack of security. I can understand that completely. All right. Young about second-hand bookshops with less about your business. So, that's an interesting one, Raymond.
I'm just sort of realising that when I was in bookshops, because it's been a number of years, I was kind of having meltdowns in them because I would see competitive business people. You know, I'd see people who were competitors in the trade that I was involved in. You know, so there was like this rush to find the rare book. So when you saw something you wanted, and then somebody would maybe come in, and then you began to sense these people around you. But bookshops, secondhand bookshops, were great for just conversations arising out of nowhere from really quite diverse and divergent people.
Yeah, Karen's got a good point, KT. About the online, like this is why it's so sad that Twitter/X has gone so toxic. Many of us had weekly or monthly Twitter spaces, and we came from all around the world, and it was all autistic led, and we had host privileges and could boot out any trolls if it ever happened. But we also had opportunities to build allyship amongst listeners. But yes, as we see with social media, Twitter, Facebook also, which has been said a few times before on here, despite the good that we can do on it, it just becomes very toxic. And the things people comment, even the things that people call you, is really, you can't believe the things that people actually type out and put out and think that's okay to do. Even though their intention is to hurt, you can tell that the comment's intending to hurt, and it's just it's really frustrating, angering actually. So that's things you've got to be wary of as well, and that's why some places online are really rigid and strict on who they let in as members. But by doing that, they're excluding genuine people because of that.
I don't really want to be in any of these text-only spaces. I've looked at a few Discord servers. I've looked at a few Facebook groups. And it just doesn't float my boat, that kind of communication. I like what we're doing here, speaking directly to each other, and having the nuance of voice and seeing what people text. That, I don't know, chat room kind of idea just doesn't do it for me.
The next post is from Neurodivergent Lou, who's a blogger finding a place in the neurotypical world. And what Lou kind of presents a lot of different presentations with different things. And what this one's called, What Autistic People Want Our Friends to Know. Number 1, when I ask for an end time for when we will finish hanging out, this isn't because I don't want to spend time with you. It is to manage my energy levels and predictability. Because being autistic can be exhausting, partly due to existing as an autistic person in a non-autistic world. I also struggle with unpredictability. This means I might ask for a rough time as to when we're going to finish. This isn't because I don't enjoy spending time with you. It is a way to accommodate myself and cope as an autistic person. Number 2, I sometimes struggle to interpret other people's emotions. Please tell me if I upset you. Because as autistic people, we may struggle to pick up on the non-verbal social cues that other people are upset. For example, we may upset someone without even realizing what we have done. Depending on the situation, it can be useful to know when we have upset you and what we need to do differently so it doesn't happen again. Number 3, I massively appreciate the fact that you looked up the accessibility information in advance and considered how to include me. I appreciate that you still invite me, even if you think I won't want to come. Because I can't even explain how much it means when people make the effort to consider our accessibility needs. It is never expected, but always so appreciated when this is done. Along with this, as an autistic person, there may be some things which I don't want to or can't do, but for me, I really appreciate when people still invite me. It helps me to feel included and thought about. It gives me the agency to decide. Number 4, sometimes being autistic makes me feel like a bad friend. Say that again. Number 4, sometimes being autistic makes me feel like a bad friend. Because I frequently worry about being a bad friend, and sometimes the norms of friendship feel difficult. For example, I worry that I am too clingy. I am too slow at replying at messages. I talk about myself too much. I am too much, etc. Sometimes reassurance really helps. Number 5, sometimes I might look like I'm fine, but underneath the surface, I'm really struggling. Because as a heavily masked autistic person, I feel like there is sometimes the assumption that if it isn't externally obvious that I am struggling, then I must be fine. However, sometimes I might be really struggling, but also masking my autistic traits. It's quite a lengthy one, so I'll take a break on that. What's people's thoughts on this post so far?
I have more problems with people misinterpreting my emotions. They often think I'm angry when I'm actually anxious. And the other thing is when I'm doing things like on a bus, because I've got no alternative, they don't realise how much I'm struggling.
I think on the other side to this, like, I often think about how my head would absolutely explode trying to live somebody else's life. And like, they're not going to stop and explain to me all the stuff that's going on that's affecting how patient or how like tolerant they're able to be. So I think all relationships have got like two parts to them. And you just don't know what another person's like going through.
You don't know what another person's going through, but it's always the autistic person that's got to make the accommodations for the neurotypical person.
They probably feel otherwise.
Yeah, I agree, Nicola. I am quite sure that there are plenty of people out there that are trying their absolute best to get their head around people who are different to them, to be allies with them, parents, brothers, sisters, cousins, rallying around an autistic person within their family or their community. I've seen it in lots of spaces. I even saw it in India when a member of staff was autistic and non-verbal and they created a sign language so that they could make sure that he was included. I know it feels like that a lot, Robbie. And the balance, I'm sure you're right, tends to come down on we should do it differently rather than the majority. And they are the majority. There's so many more of them. So it does cut both ways, doesn't it, a bit?
And I do feel like in an ideal world it might be different, but everybody's facing the same like economic reality and the like terror on if they look on the news and all of that. So everybody's faced a pandemic and a lockdown, and like, I mean, electricity bills are more than rent used to be, mortgages used to be like a week, so everybody's we're all in a bit of a wild place altogether.
There's just a couple of more things on this post. I thought I was halfway through. I'm actually nearly finished, so there's just a few more just to add. So number 6 is sharing a relatable story is a way to show I care, not as a way to be selfish. Because autistic people sometimes have a tendency to bring up our own relevant life experiences, particularly when someone else is struggling. This may be a way for us to show that we are comprehending what the other person is saying, demonstrate that we care, try to build a relationship with the other person, and to try and ensure that they don't feel alone. However, sometimes it's interpreted as selfish by others. And number 7, when you share your social preferences and needs, it makes me more comfortable to share mine. Because as an autistic person, I sometimes worry that I am being too much or I am being too difficult to accommodate. It feels like growing up in a majority non-autistic world. We are often subconsciously and consciously taught that we are not worthy of being accommodated. For me, I find it really helpful when non-autistic people share their preferences and needs in friendships. Yes, non-autistic people have preferences and needs too. This can help us feel more able to explain our own needs and preferences. What's people's thoughts on that? I mean, I've got many close friends. I've had many close friends. There's one particular one that's no longer with us, sadly. But I've always kind of, just what that kind of presentation sort of saying is, how I feel so glad and grateful that I'm being accommodated within that friendship. Because I know the way that I can behave sometimes can be a bit out there in comparison to others, or so I thought. And sometimes I've kind of been a bit daft and doing stupid things, nothing major, nothing bad. It just daft things, having a laugh. Then you only realise that that's what other people do anyway, but you're just judgmental about yourself over it. But there's always that appreciation, because you know how life can be lonely. It's just to have those friends that appreciate you for who you are, and doing the same in return for them. So it's kind of things like that I relate to, the way the post is describing. The next post is from Pete Warmby, autistic author. He's a writer, autistic and ADHD writer and speaker on autism and autistic lived experience. And what he shared is basically a quote. And it says that, and I can understand this one, school attendance awards are ableists. And he explains they seldom take into account the realities of chronic conditions, disability, and their own inaccessibility, which includes autism. Most people's thoughts on that. I do recall this. I don't know if they still do it, but I do recall this school attendance awards thing and the points, and if you attend school so many times, like percentage, like not like you're better than everybody else, but you're some sort of prize winner or gold star winner, whatever. What's other people's thoughts?
I had a job in New Zealand in 2008, it would have been, and it was completely different in terms of like the workers' approach to their jobs. And my boss would say to like people, hey, you've not taken any sick days, so why don't you have a duvet day? Like, are you resting enough? Why aren't you taking your sick days? Like, you're a human, you do get ill. Like, are you resting enough? And she would like chase people home at like on a Friday evening as early as possible. And they just didn't have the same kind of, I don't know, like culture of, yeah, like we do here. It was, I'm sure it wouldn't have been like that in all sectors and all places, but it was a little bit more like health focused.
Well, it's certainly encouraging when you know places are like that somewhere in the world, because as the so-called normal society, it seems that's not the case. It's like if it's work or school or anywhere like that, it's like if you miss one, or if you miss a few, it's like reliability of you as being able to do, or just reliability as a person, goes down all the time. Because I do recall going back to school that there was many people that never really went to school. And I'm going back about nearly 30 years here, so obviously different kind of attitudes then. There was many people that didn't go to school, and people couldn't understand why that was the case. And then you meet one or two later on, it was because they were getting a hard time, not just at home, but it was just like they get absolutely bullied and picked on and not left alone. Just, and it impacts a lot of people in different ways. And many of these people were autistic. And I know when I get picked on and that in school, and I couldn't understand why that was happening in the first place, apart from having red hair and wearing glasses and freckles. That seems to have a bias towards it anyway. But it's just like, it really impacts you. And there was many things that used to kind of stay in the mind as well, even if it's something quite minor, like a minor insult or a minor mistake made. It could play over and over in your head. So school attendance, even though my attendance was actually relatively good, but it wasn't because I enjoyed it, it's because I felt that was, you must do this. You can't have sick days, even though I had one or two. It's just like that sort of pressure of doing that is completely wrong. And I think it's so unfair in people that are genuinely struggling. And I would hope that there's a lot more options now for people to attend school in different ways and get an education that they need and want. Because the experience I've had in the past, it's just been quite brutal. And I mean, I've said it all before, it's like basically putting you through a factory to educate you and throw you out and see you get a job, make money for society. But getting back to the point of the post, has anybody heard of school attendance awards?
I don't recognise that happening with my kids, but I remember that from when I was at school in like the 90s.
Yeah, I do remember awards right enough. It's kind of, my memories are flooding back now. I can remember I got an award for 1994-95 school year, because I was involved with the careers library in the school. And I used to wait behind after school in the careers library, then get a later bus home. But a lot of that was due so I wouldn't get picked on the bus home, rather than actually being that interested in the careers library. But so there must have been that sort of thing that was amongst that, because I can't remember, because I can't say I enjoyed those awards much. It was like you're sitting in a big PE hall and surrounded by a lot of people, and you didn't want to be there. So there must have been a part of that did that sort of strange thing. If you're good at tennis, that means you're a star, you're a hero. And I wouldn't say that's always the case. I wouldn't say that's the case at all. If you're kind of considering the reasons why many people don't have good attendances.
I think there's also a bit as a parent about if one of my kids just was health was affected by school such that they were off a lot. What I've done with my son is arrange that he has a reduced timetable, so he still gets like the full curriculum, and there's some work he can do at home, and it stops him getting his burnt out. And it's something that his head teacher had said that was now being much more recognised as a need for. She said, in her words, it was particularly high masking kids, and yeah, I just thought that might resonate with some people. And it takes a big stress off about this kind of, oh no, I'm missing school,
The local schools seem to be really good just now around here in Edinburgh. It seems like the parents really put pressure on them because there's such a kind of wave just now of diagnosed autism and a lot of the young kids around here.
Honestly, I think it's something to be said for the peer support services and us just having to support one another, because I feel that for me, getting to hear how other parents have supported their kids has really helped me to understand and to advocate for their needs. Especially just because like the way that I was brought up was just so different, and not like what would be good to pass on, really. So, and it's been so much easier to sort of learn that alongside other parents who, often are pretty cognizant of their own neurodivergent traits. And yeah, have, be able to kind of put stuff into words and communicate on their behalf, even when it's kind of hard for us alone to put it into words.
Yeah, they say you learn an awful lot at the school gates. You meet the other parents. Although I've got pretty bad memories of the school gates when I was actually attending as a pupil. But yeah, I think around here it's kind of like a community to a certain extent. They all go there at the same time to meet each other, and they may not be the greatest communicators in the world due to their own lack of education, but they'll certainly defend their corner.
I mean, personally, for me, I avoid as much like in-person contact as I can. And so like my community that I've built, it's been other parents that I resonate with. So it's a bit, I get that I might get into echo chambers sometimes. But then when I do deliberate peer support in connection, like then that's when I think I get kind of more context as well. So it's I think having different views can be quite helpful. Sorry, I'm havering a bit.
No, I get what you're saying. Sometimes we don't want to be visible.
I'd give anything for an invisibility cloak. Well, I wouldn't give anything, but I don't say that around any fairies. But no, I would. An invisibility cloak would be cool.
Yeah, careful with those fairies. But you've just got to baffle the machine. That's why I said earlier, glitch can be good sometimes.
The next post is our. Usually go by this, but the next post is promoting the autistic adult drop-in, and it's called the 444, and it's 4:44 p.m. every Sunday. It was a drop-in. All welcome, no booking, just come in. A few regulars welcome, new people who spontaneously join at the last minute. There's no expectations, just come and go. Some things regulars say in the podcast are just conversation. Most casual just listen and hang out in a company. Some text, some speak. Slow conversations that we have about autism with many silences. And there was an edit. I mean, what we do is we provide an edited version as an example of what we do. And obviously the silences are cut out. Is there anything else you want to kind of add to that, Jules? Just wanted to kind of promote this while I was going by it, because it is very worthwhile. And the one today was very good, as explained earlier. You're on mute, Jules, in case you're speaking.
Houston, we have a problem.
Next post is from Jordan James, the autistic photographer, and he shared a quote. As a neurodivergent, I feel like there are two versions of me. The happy child, blissfully watching cartoons, playing video games, collecting action figures, and snuggling my plushies. Then the adult, living with responsibilities, pressures, work, and day-to-day tasks. I need to do both, but only one makes me truly happy. What's your thoughts on that?
Can we get a bit of both? I think he says that, or they say that, or I need to do both, but only one makes me truly happy. I don't know. I think you can blend the two together and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was shocked by that. I was thinking that's such a binary way of living. You know, if you don't enjoy the time that you're doing your day-to-day tasks and being adult and just, yeah, enjoying the responsibility of making decisions in your life for your family, you know, no, that's a real shame. That's a real shame.
Yeah, I've got almost an Orwellian thought here, you know, that work can be play and play can be work.
I think that there's so many other feelings than happy, and I don't think maybe being happy all the time. It's like sometimes I want to feel like in a kind of moody, musicy mood. Like I don't want to be happy all the time. Like when I stayed in New Zealand, the weather was really good, and I was like, I really wish it was just like raining and grey.
Yeah, miss the rain.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but this only one makes me truly happy and contented. You know, it feels so limiting.
Was it Shirley Manson, the Garbage, who sang "I'm only happy when it rains"?
Yeah, I've got a kind of pick with that band.
I think a lot of these quotes, when published, is at the moment of how you feel at that exact time. Now, I'm not saying that that's how Jordan feels. He obviously can do it for himself, but I think a lot of it is put how you feel at that exact moment or that time period, and maybe one thing is kind of more happiness than over the other because maybe doing the more responsible thing is a bit more kind of stressful and constrained, and I don't know. I'm just kind of waffling a bit. I'm just kind of thinking out loud of that, why that come into pass, because Jordan, he puts a lot of great positive stuff about the other, the adult life that he leads, and being a family man and proud of his family, his daughter, Sophie, James, who has her own Facebook page, which I sometimes share. So sometimes just in the moment, and the reason I'm saying that as well is because sometimes I'm in a moment where I want to do the sort of blog thing. Like there's just something bugging me and I just want to put it down and put it on the page because I do them fairly quickly. And then I forget about it. Then I feel better and then I'd say, I'm not going to bother with that. So I think maybe that comes into play as well. Just maybe sharing an emotional moment. Kind of, what do you call it? Just letting it out.
What are plushies?
I don't know. Maybe somebody else can answer that.
I think it's a word for like you look teddy bears, but there are lots of different shapes. Like you get ones that are burrito shaped.
What shaped?
Like burritos, like food shaped, or ones that are like mugs of tea, or then might be a squid. So when I was wee, you mostly had like your teddies, and it was more unusual to have an animal that wasn't a teddy bear. Whereas nowadays you can have any animals, plants, mushrooms, and yeah, like inanimate objects.
Oh yeah. I had a monkey, Charlie the cheeky monkey. I miss him so much.
I had a teddy bear called Mo Johnson for some reason.
Did he play for both sides?
He did actually, aye. I grew up in a Celtic family, so I don't remember him naming the thing. I think it must have been my dad. But I think he wanted to change the name in the late 80s, But no, I just thought it was quite a funny childhood memory. I used to like kind of cuddling into, see like the teddies and all that, and actually till I was about maybe 14, 15. Then I realised, oh, can I have another pillow? Then that's some substitutes for it. I just feel like nothing to somebody cuddle into to help me sleep.
I've befriended an orb weaver spider this week. He decided to create a web attached to my laptop and my lamp. And so he was just staring at me from the centre of his web every time I went online. And I kind of grooved on it. I kind of like went studying spiders and like how they eat and live and how they form their webs. And it was just an intense thing.
Spiders are so cool, and like close up they look like they've got wee beardy faces. I think that they've got I think that spiders have got quite goofy fun personalities.
Well, I didn't want to damage it in case, like, you know, he was totally knackered, you know, and like tired from making this web. And then I read up on it and they went like, okay, it would exhaust him, but he would just recreate it or do something, or he would eat up his own web for sustenance. And I went, this is just an amazing other world here in my living room.
The next post is from Swan Autism Scotland. Community page. Swan is an autistic-led charity run by and for autistic women and non-binary people since 2012, based in Scotland, UK. And they've got a new group starting called a New Swan Spaces group, which is starting on Wednesday, the 26th of March, so this Wednesday coming. It's a student social meetup online group, and it will run every last Wednesday of every month from 6 to 7 p.m. UK time. It's an informal, relaxed online social meetup for all autistic, self-diagnosed or clinically diagnosed women and non-binary students currently studying at a Scottish university. And there's details linked for the details to link to the group, which is through Eventbrite, and it's a free group for people who want to access that. Just thought it was worthwhile sharing. What's other thoughts?
These are exactly the sort of spaces that we need. We need to be networking ourselves together, because being in an autistic only space is a respite from the rest of the world.
The last post of today, I'm just going to add, I've not posted it yet, but I'm going to once we're finished, is from a link that the KT Karen shared, and it's called Not Fine in School. And it's created as a resource for the growing numbers of families with children experiencing school attendance barriers. These barriers often relate to unmet special educational needs and disabilities, diagnosed or suspected, physical or mental illness, bullying and assault, trauma, excessive academic pressure, overly strict behaviour policies, and a missing sense of belonging and an irrelevant curriculum. School attendance barriers are poorly understood, incorrectly managed, and are compounded by current challenges within education, health, and local government systems. This problematic response often has severe consequences for both child and family. At the heart of Not Fine in School, there's a Facebook support group with a membership of over 61,000 parents, carers, and other family members. This offers a space for shared lived experience and peer empowerment. So this is what they provide: support, where they facilitate peer support for family members, and we share advice for young people and professionals. Empowerment, we share resources to help you make decisions, find solutions, and take positive steps for your family. And awareness, we take part in academic studies and conduct research to help raise awareness of related issues, and it's based in the UK. What's your thoughts on this?
So it's UK based. I was wondering if it was maybe global. Being on Facebook, it probably is to some extent, but just need to peruse it a bit more. 61,000 is quite a community. It's almost a bit like, you know, these things like forums like Mumsnet or something like that, support groups. We need to check. I'll check this out.
I just like these things. I think I say that about a lot of things, but of all the barriers, of all these negative and a lot of kind of bad times that a lot of people are going through, a lot of injustices, a lot of, you know, negative experience people are having, it's good to know that there's things out there that can help, even just a little bit, even provide a little bit of information, or even just be a safe space for support. And we've talked about that quite a number of times, you know, this evening, is having a safe space to open up and talk about, and sometimes be inspired by other people's experiences and ideas, depending what's being talked about. But basically feeling that you're not alone. And I think that's the biggest thing about talking about it all kind of globally, thinking about the whole thing, is people not feeling alone with things. And there's at least one other person to speak to and they feel they'll be supported by.
I think it's important to have somewhere to learn from other people's experience.
Yeah, exactly, Robbie.
Well, it's true. Everything that I've learned and everything that I know has been learning from others. And sometimes learning from others of what not to do as well as being inspired to do something. So you're absolutely right there, Robbie. It's the most recent post. I've just put Not Finding School on the Facebook page right now for anyone who wants to look at it later on. I just found it a good opportunity just to be that the post was kind of going and what I was going through in terms of the list. That's why I raised it at the end there. So thanks everybody for taking part this evening. It was once again a great conversation, quite intense, sometimes a wee bit funny as well. All kind of emotions go through as always with different topics and different conversations and experiences. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 16th of March 2025, which is part of the 555 live and Autistic Radio through Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is every Sunday 5:55 p.m. UK time and usually ends about 7:30 p.m. UK time. So thank you once again. Really enjoyed tonight. I look forward to next time. And now I'll hand over to Jules.
Thanks, Harry. This is the time of the program where we look at what Autistic Radio organises and the work of Autistic Association, who makes Autistic Radio happen.